Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar with Sunshine Hydro. My name is Emily McFarlane. I'm the Senior Campaign Lead here at Birchal. And just before I introduce the team, I'd like to hand over to Tony for an acknowledgement of country.
Thank you, Emily. Welcome, everybody. As the First Nations partner to this exciting Janguri Gungai Clean Energy Project, I welcome you all to today's webinar on behalf of the traditional owners across this country of ours. I pay specific acknowledgement and respect to the traditional owners of the country on which this project will occur. The Balalai, Gurang, and Trilobang peoples. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Tony. So today I'm joined obviously by Tony, but also Chris, Michael, Rick and Verpi from Sunshine Hydro. So Birchal's working with Sunshine Hydro on their upcoming crowdsource funding offer. A few of you might not be familiar with crowdsource funding or CSF. You might also know it as equity crowdfunding, but it's a relatively new form of fundraising in Australia that allows startups and small businesses to raise capital from a large number of smaller or retail investors, as well as wholesale and sophisticated investors through an online platform such as Birchal. So instead of seeking funding from traditional sources such as banks or venture capitalists, companies can turn to the general public, and quite often this is their communities, to raise money in exchange for equity in their business. So Birchal Financial Services will be the licensed intermediary for this offer. The information and discussion in this webinar is for informational purposes and should not be considered as advice or a recommendation to invest. So please do your own research and always consider the offer document and the general CSF risk warning before investing. If you need any more information or have any questions, head on over to birchal.com. Now, for today's session, the founders over at Sunshine Hydro are going to take us through a great presentation, which will be around about 20 minutes, all about the company. So it'll give a detailed overview of where they've come from, what they're looking to do with their capital raise, and any additional information you might require. We'll then switch to a Q&A session. So if you look down at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see a little Q&A bubble. So if you've got any questions during today's session, please pop it in the Q&A box as we go along, and we will answer this during the Q&A time at the end. We're also recording today's session, so if you do have to jump off early, a recording will be sent around. So without further ado, I'll hand over to the Sunshine Hydro team.
Thanks, Emily. Welcome to everyone who's on the webinar. My name's Michael Meyer, and I'm the Executive Chairman at Sunshine Hydro. And I'm here with Rick McElhenney, who's the CEO. And let me introduce him. Rick's had an amazing career as an entrepreneur, a startup founder, an angel investor, and a venture capital investor. And we've been extremely privileged to have Rick come on board Sunshine Hydro as the CEO to lead the company. So I am going to pass over to Rick for him to introduce the other members of the team.
Right. Thanks, Michael. So we've got a great team, and I'm privileged to be the CEO. I met Chris probably in 2021. In July, I became the CEO, and I pretty much, as an angel investor, I decided I certainly wasn't going to be a CEO anymore, and I certainly didn't want to be a director of a company that was in this ilk. And obviously, that didn't work. I've invested in the company. I've participated. I'm loving the journey. I've put a lot of time and effort into it, and I really enjoy the team. We've got some pretty amazing people. So Michael, next to me, has set up the largest venture capital fund in Queensland, CMC Ventures, and that was a very successful venture. He was the director of the Meyer family investments for over 10 years, and a director of one of the high-tech companies, the first high-tech company from Australia to list on NASDAQ. And he was a director and head of business development for that company. So I couldn't be more proud than to have Michael sitting beside me in this venture, and he's an amazing character, and he's really helped push this company forward, and I really appreciate his efforts. Chris Baker I've known for many, many years. We grew up together. And I met him many years ago again in the US. So I'd spent 4 years in Canada and 10 years in the US, or 13 years in the US actually. And I had a company that was involved in selling CAD/CAM systems, computer-aided engineering systems into the market. And Chris had a product that he'd developed, and this is important. He developed a product that was basically complex geometry and was used to develop the very complex interchange designs in highways around the world. That product needed to come into the US, and I tried my hardest to help Chris put that together, and there was some success there. He eventually got the product into 42 countries. I don't know how many languages it was rewritten in. I know it was Japan and Spanish and quite a few. And it was one of those products that was just ahead of its time. And I think to this day, it probably does its job better than anybody else can do it, given the quirks of that particular product. So Chris gave me the confidence, of this engineering prowess and a resilience, because to develop that kind of software is not easy. And Chris put the effort in. When people were telling him it couldn't be done, he persisted, and he's developed something in that old product that's quite special. So when he came to me and talked to me about this new product, this product that helps develop super hybrids, I knew there was some integrity in what he did, and nothing has failed in that area. He's certainly been resilient. He's certainly been had the ability to weather the storm, and he's a remarkable individual. And I, again, couldn't be more proud to have him beside me as well. Recently, in the last little while, we've had Virpi come into the fray. Virpi has worked in Finland on nuclear power plants. She was with Eon Energy Trading in Germany. She was managing the transfer of retail positions across 14 countries with an annual value of 15 billion. And she worked as a key role in Nova Energy, which is an Australian small retail energy provider based in northern New South Wales. So her experience in doing something very important for us, which is to secure the contracts, negotiate the contracts, write up the contracts for energy, both electricity and green fuels, is pretty important. And we're very pleased to have Virpi on the team. Two others that aren't here, Dan Raymond and Tim Cummins. Dan is the head of projects. He's also a civil engineer like Chris and myself. And he's got enormous experience in large infrastructure projects, as do Chris and I, by the way. And Tim Cummins has been working with Chris for many years on software development, and he's the head of software development. And he's an important player and a very long-term player in this process as well. So the full team, if you have a look in the offer document, when it does come out, you'll be able to read about everybody's experience. And I think it's pretty amazing to get these people together, and I'm very happy with that. Tony, with First Nations Green Time Energy Group, has now become a partner. In fact, he's a director now on the Jandori Gunji project with us. And being able to bring the First Nations in and respect their position has been important for both Chris and Michael and myself. And we're very happy to have him involved. Turns out when we went down to the national awards for the Telstra Awards, we didn't realise it until it was very close to the time we were going down, but Tony was also nominated for excellence in Indigenous, yeah. And we got down there and we had a ball together. It was so nice. We certainly didn't expect it, but we were able to meet a lot with Tony's family, and we had a great time. So very proud to have Tony involved. And I guess my job as the CEO, and the way I look at it, is to make sure we don't make any mistakes. If I can just do that job properly, we really can't stop this engine. It's a wonderful company with a great opportunity, a great future. So thank you all for coming, and let's get on with the show, Emily.
Great, thank you. I know that Sunshine Hydro often says that they're on the right side of history. Michael, can you explain a little bit more what that means?
Yeah, the key, there are 3 points I want to make here, Emily, really fundamental ones. There's the business model we've developed is developing what we now call and the UN calls 24/7 carbon-free energy. So as everyone would know, the wind doesn't always blow, the sun doesn't always shine, but when you combine that with deep energy storage, we're able to, with the projects we've got, is to provide 24/7 carbon-free energy. And that's the core focus of our business model and the in a sense, our core product. And then also we're working now in the area of green fuels, and the green fuels focus is around green methanol, and more latterly, sustainable aviation fuels. And at the same time, a core driver in what we're doing is fundamentally doing these projects in a sustainable way. So as Rick just mentioned, we not only want to have Indigenous engagement, but we've enabled a method to have Indigenous equity participation in the projects. And then the sites where we're developing our projects, we want to do these in a way that support sustainability and biodiversity, and that's a core driver. And I guess that was recognised last year when we won, for this year rather, the Queensland's Best Sustainable Business. So the key message is this idea of carbon-free energy and green fuels, and fundamentally sustainability and Indigenous ownership and participation. So they're fundamental issues behind the whole company's model, which will come out in the offering.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. Chris, I know that you'd love to talk a little bit about developing these projects called the super hybrids and how they work. But before that, I know you're the co-founder of Sunshine Hydro. Can you tell us a little bit about how you built the team around you?
Yeah, thanks, Emily. Look, particularly, I'd like to talk about Rick and Michael to give an idea of what's happening, not only with them but other people. Both Rick and Michael don't have to be working. They could be sitting on the beach sipping martinis, but they choose to come to work every day and work very hard with Sunshine Hydro and what we're trying to do. And what motivates them is what we're trying to do. It's a bigger picture. It's for future generations. To make sure that we do the best we can to leave the world in a good place. And so, I'm very humbled by Rick and Michael being on board and choosing Sunshine Hydro to put their efforts into. Lots of people come and ask them to be on their board or support their companies in different ways, and that they've chosen Sunshine Hydro is amazing, and I think a wonderful testament. And there are others you'll see in our information. There's a lot of other people in Sunshine Hydro who are helping out, and they could be busy doing other things, but they're part of our team because they believe in what we're doing, and I think that's a really good vote of confidence. Now to the projects and what we need to do. You can see a list of things here that every project we have to follow through these kind of tick these kind of things off. And on the right hand side of this image, it gives a picture of the interaction of the various aspects that work together to create 24/7 CFE. Now it looks a little bit complicated, but it's like a toolbox with a bunch of tools in it. Each of those things has a specific purpose and quite straightforward. It's the bringing of them together that's important here, and to have them operating together. And that's where there's not only the software, but the choosing of the various parts to put together, and the software, which is indicated by this green part here, it looks ahead for a week to look at weather forecasts and what energy is coming in. And then in each 5-minute interval, it makes a decision about what's the best thing to do with the wind and solar energy that's coming in. You know, should it be stored in the upper reservoir because there's, say, for the next few days, there's not going to be much wind, or is it best to make green fuel out of it, which is through hydrogen? Is that the best purpose at the moment, or is it best to put it in the grid because the grid needs energy? And there's even the idea of airspace in the reservoirs, that if we have a bit of, we need sometimes to have space so that when it's windy for the next few days, we have somewhere to store that energy. I'll just put a circle around this part here. The green fuel production is a focus that we're coming to focus on, because we find that we can, with the engineering we've done, we know we can do this part of the project by itself in a viable way that brings revenue quite early, and then later progressively it can be incorporated into the overall picture of the super hybrid. So look, I think that should do it for me, and we can come back later if people have more questions about it.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris. Really appreciate it. So just over to you, Verpi. I know you've spent your career in energy markets. What made you want to join the team at Sunshine Hydro, and why do you think it's so special?
Thanks, Emily. I guess that for me, it's like I've always wanted to kind of work in the leading edge of whatever's happening in energy industry, whether it's been creating new ways of procuring electricity, or like with the retailer Innova Energy, we were the first community-owned retailer, so it was bringing the community along and bringing a completely different way of thinking into retailing. I guess here what I could say is that, hey, we are actually having a way of creating 24/7 carbon-free energy, and that's really exciting. So when I met Chris and kind of got to know his humble ingenuity that he's got, he's just brilliant. Really pleasure to meet him. And when he was telling me about super hybrid, and I could see what a great concept that is, and what it can achieve, I got really excited about that, and then I kind of looked into the team a little bit more, did my due diligence, and I could find the deep experience that Rick and Michael had, and I thought that, yeah, I want to be part of this team. So here I am. I guess that when I look at the super hybrid, what I can say that is really making it different is that these projects can be so-called bankable, so you can basically fix the revenue streams largely on the buy and the sell side. So if you're looking at that chart in front of you, you can see those long-term contractual supply and then the long-term fuel supply and the carbon-free energy supply. When you can fix those prices and you're basically kind of I guess getting an insurance against the market volatility, you can get much more certain projects, and that way you can get investors on board. So that was like the thing that I thought that's really kind of moving the needle on creating these projects, and I guess that sort of ecosystem approach. So not thinking in silos, not looking at just creating pumped hydro, or just creating hydrogen production on their own, but doing things together and kind of seeing, optimizing it as an ecosystem. I saw that that's really an approach that is quite novel, and something that I don't think others have really thought of. So yeah, I guess that's kind of what makes it really exciting for me.
Fantastic. Thank you. That was super, super interesting. just to go to you, Rick, how does Sunshine Hydro actually make money? What is the business model around it?
So you have to go back in history a little bit to answer this one. Chris originally set out to decarbonize the planet, small ambition. And he looked at pumped hydro as being one of those major pieces. It's the biggest battery, it's proven, and it's worked for hundreds of years, literally. So when he said, this is what I want to do, I want to really focus on storing energy, and when the wind's not blowing, the sun's not shining, how do I smooth that out? How do I make it perfectly equivalent to a nuclear power plant, but using these unusual intermittent products? How do I do that? He came across a financial viability problem where pumped hydro really just hasn't succeeded at all. So in the US, there's a lot of attention on pumped hydro at the moment, but there wasn't any attention. And in fact, no projects were put together over a period of 15 years because they weren't financially viable. And they're still not financially viable. It's still really difficult to get these projects up. So what he did was put together, a program where he could optimize, the various components. He's added the load of electrolysis, which is a big step to produce an additional product. And he's now got multiple revenues that the pumped hydro can rely on, which gives the investors return much higher than they've ever been. So pumped hydro is finally viable, and any project can be done properly if it's looked at in the eyes the way Chris has defined it, through a super hybrid. So those projects can make money, and if we go ahead and develop those projects, then we can work out where we get our fees from. And you can see here on this chart, project management fees, selling down on project ownership, the green fuel sales, which I'll mention in a second, and ASOP licensing fees. And we're also beginning to consult to other players. So around the world, there's lots of pumped hydro, and all of those pumped hydro stations, in my opinion, need to be shifted to take advantage of what Chris has done. So it's a very, very big market, and they're going to be asking us, and they're beginning to ask us, how do we do this? And it's not that easy. So we'll get some consulting fees out of that as well. So that's really how we bring the value back to the shareholders.
Sorry, I couldn't find my microphone button there.
Oh.
Thank you so much. That was super thorough. I'm going to turn to Tony now. So where did you first form the first?
Just 1 second, Emily. There is another slide there that I think
I've missed you.
Yeah.
No, go for it, Rick.
Yeah. So, the shift that we've made in the last few months has been to really put a focus on green fuels, and it's a very different focus. And what it does for us, and the reason we're doing this fundraising, is to accelerate our growth in this green fuels area. And the primary benefit is that we bring projects forward. The pumped hydro projects are very long term, very difficult to put together, and we're doing really well with it. Everything's going quite nicely. But if we can develop these green fuels projects, we can put less expensive projects into the market, and generate cash flow for the business much earlier than we were originally anticipating. So that's the reason that we're doing this raise, and this is an example of one of those projects. We take biomass, we add it to the hydrogen that we're creating through the super hybrid. We can bring these projects forward and then produce methanol, which we can sell into the market. And as Michael said earlier, it's not just green methanol. We can do sustainable aviation fuel as well. So the market for these two products, green methanol and sustainable aviation fuel, is potentially huge. There is a big market for hydrogen, but we haven't had a lot of confidence in the hydrogen market. Selling hydrogen is difficult because you have to store it and you have to ship it, and they're two difficult things to do in that market. Whereas the green methanol and the sustainable aviation fuel have a very, very ready market. So that's a big part of why we're doing this raise.
Thanks so much, Rick. Sorry for interrupting you before. So I'm just going to turn over to Tony. Why did you form the First Nations Green Time Energy Group? And can you give us a little bit of an overview of why you partnered with Sunshine Hydro?
It does. Thanks, Emily. Look, there's quite a number of reasons why we formed the First Nations Green Time Energy Group, but just talking about the partnership with Sunshine Hydro, I guess the thing that that First Nations Green Time Energy Group saw was the integrity from the Sunshine Hydro team. When we floated the whole idea with Chris and Michael, firstly, around that opportunity for a First Nations entity to become a true shareholder in the Djanguri Gungai project. The response was, how do we make this work? Not go away, we'll talk to you later. It was, how do we make this work? And from there, we built the partnership based on integrity, shared experiences. If I can talk a little bit about another company that my brother Ash and I have been operating for about 8 years, specifically focusing on the First Nations employment and training opportunities on a major clean energy project, which is the Kidston, the Genex Kidston pumped hydro project up west of Cairns. We've been facilitating First Nations employment and training opportunities in that space. So we saw a synergy there where we could bring that experience into the project, the Sunshine, in partnership with Sunshine Hydro, to be able to bring that expertise there as well. But talking more broadly, First Nations people have been left out of major opportunities globally, particularly mining that's happened in the past. First Nations people haven't become true equity partners in that sector and have been left behind and haven't really benefited economically and socially from that opportunity. So we see the move here, particularly in this country here, where we're moving to zero emissions and decarbonising the planet as an opportunity to bring Indigenous expertise around caring for country, and also a way of being true shareholders of equity shareholders of projects to bring about intergenerational wealth creation. So I guess they were the key things that enable us to really form a strong partnership with the team, the Sunshine Hydro team, and some of the motivators around creating long-term opportunities for First Nations people. If I can just say, if you look at the countries like Canada, they're very, very advanced in terms of the government ensuring that First Nations people are true equity shareholders in major projects that are happening on their country. So we saw that the team here at Sunshine Hydro are very, very committed and very innovative around actually being ahead of the game around having Indigenous inclusion in the projects.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Tony. And thanks, team, for getting through such an incredible and insightful presentation. Really appreciate it. We've got a few questions that have come through if you're ready to answer. Awesome. So who is taking on your biochar product?
Chris, do you want to answer that?
Look, we haven't sought a market for that because that's a part of the let's call it perhaps a byproduct for it, and our focus has been on looking at who will take the methanol. So there is some biochar that will come out of these projects that we will. I think we'll find a ready market for it. I believe there's quite a demand for it.
Great, thank you. What is the biomass source of 130 tonnes per day?
So perhaps I can look where we're exploring different options, and what we want to be sure is that that what we take doesn't have a detrimental impact on the environment. So we're looking at residues from agriculture, for example, nut husks is something that you know, meets the requirements that we have. There's also from sawmills and forestry, there's waste, you know, when the logs are cut, you know, to make timber for housing and so on. The pieces on the edge that are an odd shape, you know, that's waste, and that's part of the biomass source that we can use for this. Also in crops such as sugarcane, there's bagasse. Most of that's pretty much accounted for, but there's also trash. They call it trash, sugarcane trash. That's another possibility for it. So we're in the process of deciding which of those is going to be best for us. In the long term, we're really enamored with what Professor Ross Garnaut puts forward as a solution for Australia. If we look at the big picture for Australia as a superpower, we have some endemic species in Australia that can grow in low rainfall areas, and in many areas the land has been cleared and those species are no longer there. So we see a nice possibility of regrowing those endemic species to get them back to increase biodiversity and to be able to harvest them in a coppiced manner. That is, you harvest, cut the tops or part of the tree, and the roots stay there, and the soil carbon remains, and the tree grows back, and you're able to continually harvest it while at the same time increasing the soil biodiversity and carbon.
Great, thank you so much. Chris, while I've still got you, could you speak a little bit more about the ASOP as a technology and its potential for implementation for energy systems beyond Australia?
Look, it might be interesting to show the animation that we've got here. Let me just flick to this screen. Is that am I still sharing? Is that showing up, or do I
No, you just need to share your screen.
need to share again? Let me do that again. And let's have a look. So this can really be used anywhere where there's a similar contestable electricity market. So what I'm showing you here is what we call a live model of the Djandori Gungai project, as though it was running in the market today. And here's some things that we can see, that this timestamp here shows the current interval in the market, and the price in the Queensland market is this price here, $42. And the wind that's coming from various wind farms, and if I click on this, you'll see there's a list of various production from different wind farms. It's 273 megawatts, and there's 361 megawatts of solar. That comes into the system, and ESOP, this is represents the software, decides where to send it. And this piece here, the 300 megawatts, that's the core that we've been talking about, that Michael was talking about earlier, and we keep coming back to the 24/7 carbon-free energy. This 300 megawatts, our target is to produce that 24 hours a day, every day, under all weather conditions. And we can do that at better than 98% reliability, which is called the platinum standard for this product. And most of the time it's much better than that. You know, most weeks will be 100%. And you can see this represents the hydro. Under these circumstances, no energy would be going to the hydro, but where it's sending it is to make hydrogen, which is here, and to the hydrogen to what we've called process, which would be making in our preferred model now, which would be making methanol. What it wouldn't show is that biomass would also be coming into that. So this ability to take data from the electricity grid and from the systems that are contributing to it can be adapted anywhere in the world where this kind of electricity market is available.
Awesome, thank you. That's really, really interesting. So
Emily,
what?
can I just
Oh yeah, go
the
for it.
question on biomass? I wanted to give an example, Chris, that Chris has talked about the sort of products we're using, but I'll just use an example. We've recently responded to a proposal in New Zealand, and I'm going over to New Zealand at the end of the month to talk to one of the New Zealand airlines. But what we've been negotiating with potential suppliers in the timber industry is the opportunity to get 10-year contracts. So what we need to do when producing green fuels, we need to be able to have long contracts, at least 10 years of supply. It has to meet the criteria for sustainability. There are global standards that have to be met and complied with, and they have to be audited standards. So what we're in the process of doing is setting up those long-term contracts and on the supply side, and also setting up the long-term offtake contracts. This is the green fuels, be it methanol or be it sustainable aviation, they're really only now coming to the forefront. In order to make them viable and to get the returns, you have to be able to get sort of long-term supply as well as long-term offtake. And that's the process that we're literally in the middle of doing right now for our first 2 projects that you'll see something about in the information memorandum. Sorry, Emily. This one.
No stress. And I know by information memorandum, you mean offer document.
Offer document, yes.
Same.
Same. Yeah.
No worries. So at this stage, what related infrastructure is required for the pumped hydro, e.g. like pipelines, and who is doing the construction work for this?
Chris?
Yeah, look, we haven't chosen a contractor, although it's quite interesting that the people that Tony has worked with, ATW at Genex project, which is in North Queensland, we've had chats with those people, but they're, for example, a good candidate, which is Andritz for the hydro equipment, and John Holland and McConnell Dowell, who have done the work there. Why it's interesting is because they've done one before. They're building it right now. And with large projects, you can gain benefits from repeatability. So if you have the same crew, the same techniques, and apply them again to another project, which in many ways is quite similar, we're able to gain a lot of advantage from the experience that these folks, including Tony, have built up on that project. As to the nature of the project, pipelines, the water will flow in a tunnel. So our understanding of the rock is that will be sufficient to contain the flow of water. And in other regards, a pipeline is because Australia, as we know, is a dry country, and even though for this project, on average, there is enough rainfall to fill the reservoirs, Australia is not a country where it sticks to the average. We have droughts, and then we have lots of rain, as we've seen. So in the drought period, we are having some, let's call it, insurance of the ability to use desalinated water to be able to top it up in really dry periods. So that's another aspect requiring a pipeline.
Awesome, thank you. So at this stage, how do you see an international market developing for the super hybrid solution?
Yeah, let me take that one. Look, we've spent a lot of time overseas working with various people. We need to focus on the Australian market initially to get our feet on the ground, as Michael likes to say, to eat our own dog food. But we're a member of the International Hydro Association, and they know very well what we're doing. They're willing to help us, push the word out, and they're doing that. We've met with the Department of Energy in the US, and they know what we're doing. In fact, they've provided some funds that haven't been spent yet on studying what we do. So the word is getting out there quite significantly that our super hybrid model is something different. But we need to really focus on the Australian market at this stage. We're also, we're the 116th signatory in the Carbon Free Energy Compact, which was set up by the United Nations. So, we know what we've got to do in the international market, and we've got to walk one step at a time into that opportunity. At the moment, we're definitely looking at the Australia, New Zealand opportunities as ripe for the picking, and we're going to focus there for now.
Thank you so much. So all of the approvals have been obtained from the government and environmental agencies for the hydro project now?
No, that's not the case. We're still in the process. We've done some of the environmental work. We need to do a dry season survey. So it's in progress. So we don't see any red flags to any of that. We're progressing with confidence about it.
And also, Chris, if you wouldn't mind just commenting on how much quicker the approvals processes are for the green fuels projects, because I think that's important as well.
Oh yes, that's an important thing that that is a focus of this raise, is that this projects, the green fuels projects, are much smaller projects, just occupying a few hectares and typically in an area where there's no impact on adverse impact on neighbours, and so it's an easy approval process because of the smallness of the project and the benign nature of them. And so that would be done at a local level, with referrals if necessary to the state on things that are required. But that makes for a much quicker project. So the approval process is, over the order of a year or so, and the construction a similar period of time, maybe 12 to 18 months construction. So they're much more contained and clearer projects, and they are a step towards the bigger project. They will be incorporated later.
Brilliant. So there's a question for you here, Verpy. So given your expertise in energy markets and risk assessment, both locally and internationally, are you able to provide any insights into how you plan to navigate evolving market trends and capitalize on the growth and expansion opportunities for both domestic and international markets?
Sure, thanks. Thanks for that. I guess that when you look at it internationally, the 24/7 carbon-free energy is something that I think the Europeans have started leading the way with that. They've started creating standards around it and saying, what is the platinum standard and gold and silver and so on, and looking at what is required for that. The US has followed that with even a tiny bit more strict schedules and things like that. But there really is that demand there. They're putting that sort of reporting requirement for you to be able to provide green or 24/7 carbon-free energy to your customers. And that's how it sort of starts trickling down the supply chains and having ripple effects. So then, for example, a data center will have to be green in order to provide that service to their customers. So you can see how that is trickling down, and it's largely, when you look at it in Australia, it's coming from that demand from the international companies, that they are asking for it globally everywhere. So you can see how it's coming. It's kind of still new. You still talk to a lot of people in the procurement who are kind of seeing that as a new thing, and not quite sure where that's, where does that sit and all that. But it is quite clear when you look at the kind of need to decarbonize our grids, and you can see that that's going to be the end stage of a decarbonized grid. You will have to be able to create everything from renewable sources. So the way we say it is that, the end state is clear, everything is going to be that. Right now, people are just getting their head around it, and there's going to be a pathway from now to the end stage. And we're looking at how do we work within that, because there's going to be, demand for it. There will be leaders in that, and we're trying to tap into those, of course, because they will be the ones willing to pay the premium and really making that commitment of procuring carbon-free energy. So I guess it kind of comes in two different ways. One is that off-taker side of it. So there will be off-takers who are really keen to purchase 24/7 carbon-free energy, and that's being both power and then hydrogen. I might actually mention a little bit about that. But then it's also in sort of what we call super hybridizing projects. So we have pumped hydro projects all around the world, and they're currently working in completely different economical business model than what a super hybrid would. So there is that thought that, you know, we could actually go and super hybridize existing assets all around the world and help them to start creating 24/7 carbon-free energy, and that way kind of have a much bigger impact on the globe. So the thing that I mentioned about the hydrogen that I wanted to get back to is that is another thing that, you know, when you're selling green hydrogen, that's obviously a thing that it's not clear when it was produced, because it's an end product, it's a commodity. But the Europeans kind of took that really strictly, that, you know, you need to show when did you actually produce it, so that you're not going and taking, for example, existing renewable energy, turning that into hydrogen, and that way leaving the rest of what's available for the grid and for electricity consumption kind of less green, because you've just carved out the green bit of it. So there are requirements around that, and I think that those are really important things in terms of making sure that as we grow the green industry, that the grid is being decarbonized along the way. So I think those are the things that we just need to basically navigate through and try and tap into the opportunities along the way. And I think there are many out there.
Thanks so much, Verpi. So obviously we're doing a fundraising round with you at the moment through the Birchal equity crowdfunding platform. Have there been any moves to get federal or state funding for the projects?
Emily, so the Sunshine Hydro has been funded by various capital raisings, you know, to date as a startup. And we see that continuing as we grow and as the opportunities come along. We have, curiously, we actually put in a grant application for our first green fuels project last Friday. We made an application for a significant matching grant to get that going, because the New South Wales government is wanting to encourage the development of green fuels and sustainable aviation fuel. And we've talked to, you know, large institutional funds who are interested in the super hybrid projects. You know, when and as we get offtake agreements in place, and we're in discussions. In fact, we've got meetings the next few weeks with someone about prospectively being an offtaker. As those pieces come together, the opportunity to tap into not necessarily state or federal government, but I would characterize it as institutional funding, will become much, much stronger. So these are big and complex projects, and they require, you know, significant capital, and we have a mind to that. But what we're really in the process of doing and have been doing as a company is doing multiple rounds of fundraising, bringing stakeholders along with us on that journey. And then we will be, you know, capitalizing on the opportunities from institutional investors and prospectively maybe state or federal, you know, funding.
And we also have received accumulated. There's a little bit over $1 million in funding, federal funding, through the research and development grant.
And the projects still are eligible for those, Emily. So we actually, Sunshine Hydro, the projects that we're talking about and they're in the offering document, qualify for the federal R&D grant program. And that equates to typically around 43% of the eligible expenditure. So yes, it has. To that extent, the federal government has been extremely helpful to getting these projects monetized and moved forward.
Great, thank you. Do you see nuclear power as a threat to your solution?
Chris can.
Can I speak to that? Look, we know that nuclear power is a good solution for producing electricity, 24 hours a day. However, in a renewable energy grid, if we look forward, say, to 2035, and we look at the patterns that we have today, where people continue to put rooftop solar on their houses because it just makes a lot of sense. So when we fast forward a few years, and it'll be like South Australia is now, where some days in South Australia, the entire electricity demand is met by rooftop solar. So in future, we'll find that happening in all the states, that there is no demand during the middle of the day. And so if we had a nuclear power station, there would be no work for it to do. On the other hand, for a pumped hydro station, it's perfect because it provides a load, and a pumped hydro station combined with hydrogen as well combines a big dispatchable load that can do something useful with all that energy that's available in the middle of the day. And what we end up with, that combination of things, is we end up being able to provide that same kind of profile that a nuclear power station does. In other words, reliable 24/7 carbon-free energy, but that blends in with a renewable energy grid. And the other important ingredient is that if we do it with the combination of renewable energy and storage, it'll be about half the price of nuclear in the prices that we see in the CSIRO cost of generation. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you so much. At this stage, has a feasibility study been done for the hydro project?
You go, Chris.
Look, we've done red flag studies and looking at various feasibility aspects of the project. So yes, indeed, and we look at lots of different angles. The hydrology, I mentioned that before. How reliable is the water supply, because we need to be able to have water available. We've looked at the type of geology that's there. We've looked at the size of the reservoirs. We've looked at the grid. It's a really strong grid in the area that we're at. If you think about it, there in Queensland, the biggest load, the industrial load, is Gladstone. There's a aluminium smelter there, which is a particularly big load, and this hydro station is right near Gladstone. So in terms of feasibility, it's in a perfect location in lots of ways, and topographically, it's a really ideal site. It has 450 meters of elevation and about 2.5 kilometers between the two reservoirs. So it has really good metrics in terms of pumped hydro.
And Michael, can you just talk about the financial viability as well? Because that's another feasibility that we need to cover.
It's a really good question. So Chris showed you the simulation. We've been running this as a digital twin project for the last 4 years. So we've actually tracked the performance of if this project had been running, and the ESOP model, we are able to run it out exactly in financial feasibility terms out to 2050. So we have built what's called what financially you'd know is called the three-way model, which is a profit and loss and a cash flow and a balance sheet, a return on investment. So part of the software that Chris has built is very clever. It's able to look at the performance, and we can see what happens on a daily basis, a weekly, a monthly, annually. So, and Chris, you might even open that slide, but we can actually track the performance in live terms as to what's happening. And we're able to take the forward curves of what we think energy prices will be. We've made very studied assessments of what the future wind and solar will be, and we've built that into a future model. So Chris can show you the chart. So we can show you a chart, and we can show you the actual financial performance, and we can track it. So you can see down here, we have this is on the gross profit terms, and this is just for a month, but we can look back 3 months, we can look back 6 months, and we can look back 12 months. So we've actually tracked the performance of, so typically for this project, if it had been running for the last 4 years, it's averaged over 300 million gross profit from the project running as a digital twin. Whereas a typical comparable project, and there's one that GE have in Queensland that they did a paper on, and they published the paper, comparable sized project, business as usual pumped hydro, was generating in the order of 40 million gross profit. Whereas the Jandori project, similar size, running with the combination of electrolysis and hydrogen and methanol sales, is tracking significantly higher. And that's, if you like, that's the magic that Chris, what we've found in using it and building these super hybrids. And then in the offer document will come out, one of the things that we're bringing forward is one of these, an early mini version of this. And Chris, you might even have to pull up that we have a mini version of 100th for sale that we're looking to do in Gladstone, and will be R&D, and it'll be able to bring the forward cash flow much sooner than the pumped hydro. So we have a mini version of this that we're in the process of moving forward that'll be combined with green fuel. So yes, the answer to your question is yes, we've had very detailed financial modelling around this project and risk assessment.
Thank you so much. Tony, would you be able to answer how other First Nations people can become involved in the projects in their region?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there's probably a number of mechanisms and resources available at the moment across the country for First Nations people to get more involved in projects, depending on the level that they want to be involved with. And a lot of it depends on what the land tenure is on where the project is happening. So, you know, like for example, if the project is happening on country that's under native title, there are already mechanisms in place, legislation and mechanisms in place for proponents to have to enter into formal agreements with First Nations people on that country. So, for example, Indigenous land use agreements. And it's at that stage where First Nations communities and groups can be negotiating what they want to achieve out of those agreements. If I can speak to what's happening right now in Australia, there is a peak body formed called the First Nations Clean Energy Network. In fact, they're having another symposium early next month. And they're essentially the voice to government around First Nations participation and issues pertaining to Indigenous peoples when it comes to clean energy projects. So that's a resource I would encourage First Nations groups or peoples to tap into that network to, you know, see what resources are available there to assist in the negotiations. So that they're some of the key things that are happening. In terms of employment and training, a lot of the funding providers, such as the Northern Australia Infrastructure Facility, require, if they're funding a project on behalf of a proponent, there is a requirement for an Indigenous engagement strategy to be in place. So the proponents have to fulfil that by essentially looking at employment targets and training and employment targets, as well as Indigenous spend on those projects. So that may mean, you know, how many Indigenous businesses are engaged in those projects.
Great. Thank you so much, Tony. And I think we've got time just for one more question. Do you have a time frame in mind for bringing all of these projects together and a start date for breaking first ground for the hydro project?
Look, these are all dependent on the approval process, and so and financial investment decision. So off the top of my head, it's a couple of years away for the breaking of first ground for the hydro project, something of that order, in order of 2 years. And we hope that we plan that the green methanol breaking of first ground would be much sooner. So that's not the hydro itself, but it'll become part of that ecosystem.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And I want to say thank you to everybody who attended from the Sunshine Hydro team for your amazing insights and for being so thorough. I've had one more, I think, that we can just fit it in. So what technical knowledge do you have around the requirements of hydroelectric power stations that operate using best practice?
So,
Yeah, talk about Soren.
talk about Soren.
So part of our team on part of our team is Soren Lupulescu, who was power station manager at Wivenhoe for 12 years, and he's guided us as we've gone through this whole process. In fact, I first met Soren in 2013, so it's been a long relationship of being mentored by Soren, and in the Wivenhoe case, even today, many years after Soren has been working there, he still calls in and has a cup of tea with the neighbours, and so that's part of best practice. Is having a good relationship with the community. They set up things there to protect the fish. Oxygenation of the upper reservoir. They had kind of aeration there to attract the fish away from the turbine intakes, so to protect the fish. And an interesting thing that thinking about best practice, and one of the benefits that comes from pumped hydro stations, because the water is circulated, the water is highly oxygenated and is really healthy water. And so you'll see in some reservoirs, we hear in summertime quite often about algae outbreaks, and that comes from the water stratifying. The temperature gets very cold and the oxygen gets low in low parts of the reservoir, and it becomes imbalanced. But pumped hydro mixes that water and brings a whole lot of benefits that come. I think there's two. We could talk for ages on this topic of best practice, but I think it's probably about all the time I've got, I think.
Thank you so much, Chris. Really appreciate it, and really appreciate everybody for their time. And thank you for everybody who joined us. As I mentioned earlier, a recording of this video will be sent around to everybody who registered in case anybody did miss out, or if you'd like to go back and see certain sections. So the expression of interest for Sunshine Hydro is live for under a week now. So if you haven't already, please jump onto the Birchal platform and check out their pitch video and company profile. The early access offer campaign will open next week. So please make sure you get your expression of interest in so that you are up to date with when the offer goes live, and you'll have the first access to the offer document and all of the key terms before it goes live to the public. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Thank you, Sunshine Hydro team.
Emily,
Great to be on board.
one other thing, there is another webinar next week. If you have friends or colleagues who may have missed out, because this is a daytime one, we do have one, giving it a plug for next Tuesday at 5:30. Is that correct, Emily?
That is correct, 5:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time. In fact, I'll even pop that one, a link for it in the chat. So in case you would like to register for it, you are most welcome. I'll just pop it in the chat for everybody now. Bear with me. And also we'll
Emily,
send...
one final thing, if there are any other questions that missed out on, if they could send them to you, I'm sure you can pass them on and we can answer them. So there may well be questions coming out of it. We'd love to answer further questions.
Thank you so much. I'll also ensure that this new webinar link is sent to everybody. So thank you very much for coming on board today, everyone, and we'll hopefully catch you soon.
Bye now.
Thank you.